Welcome to AM Best Audio. The Insurance Coffee House podcast is an insightful conversational interview with those in strategic leadership positions within the insurance and insurtech sectors. It's hosted by Nick Hoadley. He joins us now. Nick, so glad you could join us today.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to join you today.
And Nick, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so Nick Hoadley, I am the CEO of Insurance Search, and we are an executive search firm for the insurance industry. I'm based here in London, as you can tell from my accent, but we have a team in the United States and in Bermuda, and they're the areas that we cover. I'm also the podcast host of the Insurance Coffee House podcast, and that podcast is very closely aligned with what we do in our main business there.
So what was the impetus then for putting this podcast together?
Well, we just thought that we have a lot of conversations with very senior executives and C-suite leaders around the world, really talking to them about their careers, about their aspirations. And they also give us a lot of great advice and learnings actually in those conversations that we have on a day-to-day basis. We also then have conversations with those aspiring insurance business leaders who want advice from us on how they can grow their careers, how they can develop, how they can seek out new opportunities. So we thought, what a great way it'd be if we could produce a platform where those leaders could talk to those aspiring leaders, give some advice, give their thoughts on career development, and really give something back to those leaders in the insurance industry. So we created the podcast back in 2020, towards the end of lockdown. It was a great opportunity to really speak to some really inspiring leaders, some great guests. We were very fortunate to have generous guests join us from CEOs from major insurance companies and carriers, right the way to chairmen and CEOs of huge international insurance brokerages. And really across that time, we were finding out how they navigated that career journey, how they got to where they got to, and really gave them a platform to provide that advice and learnings for the next generation, for those aspiring insurance business leaders. We're actually now 4 seasons in. It's hard to believe. We then set up a mid-market series. We very quickly realized that actually career development at a mid-market at an SME business is a lot different at a big global corporate. So we had a mid-market series focusing on the United States. We then had an insurtech series where we talked about the opportunities and the challenges of joining an insurtech business, particularly if you've been at an incumbent insurer or brokerage. And then this current series that we're on, season 4, is all about people and culture. So talking to leaders, particularly actually in the people functions, so the CHROs, the chief people officers, talking to them about the culture of their big companies and how they're using that to grow successful teams, and really using that as a talent attraction magnet for more leaders into their organization.
Now, you're in the UK, so why is the podcast called the Insurance Coffee House? Why not the Insurance Tea Room?
Well, John, as you might be aware, the Lloyd's of London building was the original coffee house where essentially modern day insurance came about. So we thought, the Insurance Coffee House would be great. I mean, I've got my coffee here today, John. I always have it with me when I'm podcasting. It's one of our icebreaker questions to our guests as they join us for a cup of coffee. However, we do get quite a few American guests, and actually even some from New Jersey, John, who shared with us that they were actually tea drinkers as well, which was quite a surprise.
Very good. So who are you finding your listeners to be, Nick?
Our listeners, they're all insurance professionals. So the conversation would get quite dry listening for them if they're not in the insurance industry, as you can imagine. But they're insurance professionals. They're typically mid to senior level insurance managers and leaders. And then also we have a lot of C-suite executives as well. Majority of our listeners are based in the United States. I think around 65%. We have around about 25% are UK, London based, and then rest of the world. And I was just running a few stats actually before this interview, John, but we've had listeners from 147 countries over that time, and some of those countries I can't name myself, and I don't actually recognize. So it's incredible how this podcast medium can really spread around the world, and people can listen wherever they are.
Customize your data experience. BestLink now offers an interactive company dashboard that provides company-level intelligence in a fast, user-friendly interface featuring interactive tables, charts, and Sparkline performance histories. Customize the dashboard tiles to prioritize the insurer ratings, data, and analytics that best support your workflow. AM Best. Our insight, your advantage.
It's very impressive. Tell us a little bit about some of the guests that you've had on, Nick.
Yeah, so we've had a real range of guests, but we've been very blessed and very lucky to have some very, very senior leaders, like I said, CEOs, COOs of some of the major global insurance carriers. They've joined us from Switzerland. They've joined us from the US. They've joined us from, pretty much every big metropolitan city in the world. And it's just been great for our listeners to have that broad spectrum. On this series, we've been fortunate to have people leaders. So obviously within the business that we work in, the executive search business, we're working with highly talented chief people officers, CHROs, which are really playing a big part of the insurance sector. And really, the insurance market at the moment is really seeing that talent is really key in order to grow those organizations, bringing in high quality talent, high performing individuals. And a lot of that is the culture is set by that chief people officer. So we've been very fortunate to have some of the very best and highly regarded in that space. And it's been great to get their perspectives as well as the CEOs who have got that big vision.
I got to ask, are you getting any feedback to the podcast? And if so, what sort of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, the feedback's great. Thanks, John. I'm sure that people don't post, particularly on a nice podcast like us, anything too negative, even if they might be thinking that. So we're very fortunate in that regard. But we get a lot of great feedback. A lot of our promotion goes out on LinkedIn, so we're seeing who's providing that feedback. And when we're seeing some of the names, there's some of the CEOs, some of the COOs who are listening, sharing their thoughts on the subject that we've been discussing, it's highly motivating. We also get actually a lot of our listeners, they will listen to an episode if they're going to interview with that particular company. So before they go in an interview, they might hear the CEO talking for 30 or 40 minutes about the culture that they've built at that organization and the opportunities they have there. Or it might be the chief people officer might be telling them more about the values that they have as an organization and what they look out for when they do interview senior leaders as well. So some of our guests certainly use it as homework. Some of our listeners use it for homework. Other times as well, we actually use it as part of our methodology when we're doing a search for a client. So we might produce a podcast with them all about their business, all about their company, why it's a great place to work, what the opportunities are there. And then we'll actually go and share that out there with the insurance market and those particular leaders that we're looking to attract to the role. So we use it as a medium to attract talent, but also obviously it's some great advice. Just a couple of stories actually, John. So I had some very personal feedback, let's say, where I bumped into one of our guests in a hot tub on a vacation I was taking, which was quite funny. And on another occasion, actually, we got some feedback from a guest who she's now the CEO of QBE North America, Julie Wood, and she explained that she was interviewing as a senior level candidate for a role, and they actually brought to that interview her favorite coffee. And when she asked them, how do you know that's my favorite coffee? They said, well, you told Nick on the Insurance Coffee House podcast. So that was a great story as well.
What a great marketing tool.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's, really, we started out with the intention of purely giving advice back to the market, back to those talented, aspiring insurance business leaders. But as we've gone, we've actually had guests approach us. We've had a lot of companies approach us to say they would like to be spotlighted. They'd like to have a chance to tell their story. I think in the insurance market, we're very quick to have our own ideas about different companies. We've got our own perceptions, but actually for those businesses to really tell their story as they see it and how they see themselves, and really use that as an opportunity to attract more talent to their organization. It's been a really successful tool for that. And that's just gradually evolved as we've gone.
So speaking of telling stories then, what are some of the big questions that you're looking to answer on your podcast?
So across the series, we do have some structured questions so that we do see the patterns and traits that make people successful, and we see the patterns of those people who've made it up to the CEO or COO of particular businesses. And the key questions, and I think the most interesting questions, are the one where we ask them about adversity. So we may ask them about a particular challenge that they've had in their career or their hardest moment, and really dig deep into that and find out how they overcome that adversity and what steps they put in place to overcome that and keep moving forward. And I think that really shares a light really on that individual. It shows them as a real person rather than just this figure, this figurehead, and really brings it to light. So we always get some great feedback on those questions. We have our espresso round, which is more our quick fire, short, sharp, and to the point. We say just like an espresso, and we ask guests about their hiring advice for hiring, best practice, about interviewing best practice, and we ask them lots of questions for those candidates who are looking to make a move or are open to moves at the moment, and how they can really shape their interviewing skills for those big interviews.
Nick, there's such a wealth of information out there these days, so many platforms. Everybody's got a blog, everybody's got a TikTok, everybody's got a podcast. How do you cut through all the white noise?
John, that's a great question. I think when we started out 4 years ago, podcast was a popular medium, but nowhere near like it is now. Like we've seen, a lot of our competitors in that time launch their own podcast with varying degrees of success. And I also think varying degrees of professionalism. I think some that you can see, it's quite obvious that it's just done as a way of producing more and more content. But I think if you really take the time and really care about the output, I think you'll get the credibility that you're looking for. Yeah, so to really cut through the noise, I think it's just really about being authentic and making sure that you have a great dialogue with the guest, doing your research on the guest, and really asking those questions that the listeners want to hear. So the follow-up questions, if the guest is talking about a particular area and you think actually there's more there that we can discover, really taking that deeper dive. We produce the podcast. It goes out on Spotify and on iTunes as an audio format, and it's great for people to be able to listen to, whether they're walking the dog or they're out at the gym or they're on a run. It's been very successful for us. We're seeing a lot more out there, and we're excited to see what the next medium will be going forward.
So what are the future plans for the Insurance Coffee House podcast?
Well, future plans, the immediate one, we're hosting a Bermuda series. So we've recently launched our business in Bermuda, and we're doing a spotlight series on Bermuda, how to attract talent in the local Bermuda reinsurance market. And also, what are the things to look for, maybe if you're considering a move there? So if you're in London or if you're in the United States and you're considering an opportunity, what are some of those opportunities? What are some of the benefits? What are some of the challenges with living on a very small island like that as well? So that's the immediate series. And then later on in the year, we have a series called Building Insurance Businesses of the Future. It's a COO focused series, and we're really looking at those high performing COOs who are really driving change, really driving technology, and seeing what their thoughts are on the future of the insurance industry as we embrace AI and other different technologies, and seeing who's going to be successful and who's going to make the best adoptions there.
Nick, you mentioned that you do an espresso round on your podcast. How about we turn the tables on you and do an espresso round on you? 5 questions, lightning round.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start. Who's your biggest influence in the insurance industry?
Great question. Biggest influence? I would say Amanda Blanc, actually. I think what she's done in the industry really stands her out. I think she's very, very brave. I think she's incredibly talented, but I think she really sticks out as someone in the industry to aspire to.
Last book that you've read?
Traction by Gino Wickman. You can probably see it behind me on the bookshelf.
What's on your playlist, Nick?
What's on my playlist? Joe Rogan, Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, and lots of executive search recruitment podcasts as well, just looking to hone my skills whenever I can.
All-time favorite movie?
Top Gun.
Interesting. And being that it's the Insurance Coffee House podcast, how do you take your coffee?
How do I take my coffee? Yes, strong black, but I have the same coffee all day, every day. And if I can get it when I'm out and about as well, I'll get that as well. So that's an espresso arpeggio coffee. I think it's 8 out of 10 on strength. And I like it consistent, so I have it all day, every day.
Nick Hoadley, what a pleasure it is speaking with you today.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here.
That was Nick Hoadley, host of the Insurance Coffee House podcast. And I'm John Weber for Best Review Magazine.
Looking to get the full attention of the insurance industry? We have the platforms that will do just that. Whether it be AM Best TV, AM Best Audio, Best Review Magazine, or Best Day. Find out more by calling AM Best Advertising Sales at 908-439-2200, extension 5399, and have a great day.